To be the official mistress of the French king was never just about love or lust. It was a role woven with political influence, cultural power, and the ability to shape the course of European history from behind closed doors. These women weren't merely companions, they were power brokers who could make or break fortunes. But such influence came at a perilous cost. A single misstep could mean disgrace, exile to a convent, or even the executioner's blade. Here's why royal mistresses mattered so much and why their position was as dangerous as it was powerful. This is Women in History with Magnus. Please subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next video. The mistress had private and daily access to the monarch, which even high-ranking ministers or nobles might not enjoy. This gave her influence over his moods, opinions, and sometimes even policy decisions. Take Diane de Poitiers, the famed mistress of King Henri II. Diane was more than a lover, she was his confidant and advisor. Henri's devotion to her was so deep that he entrusted her with political correspondence and showered her with estates and titles. She was given the castle Chenonceau, a castle that Henri's wife Catherine de' Medici wanted, but bitterly had to see go to her competitor. Most famously, she wielded enormous influence over court appointments and used her authority to advance allies and secure her own family's prosperity. Courtiers knew that to reach the king, they often had to go through Diane first. Even the queen, Catherine de' Medici, who hated her, recognized Diane's hold and for much of Henri's reign could not dislodge her rival. The king's mistress often acted as a gatekeeper. Those seeking royal favor, offices, pensions, or titles would approach her first. She could make or break careers. Families connected to her could rise in rank, nobility, and wealth. This role was both lucrative and dangerous. A mistress who played the game well could shape an entire era, while one who overreached could fall spectacularly. Madame de Pompadour, mistress of Louis XV, understood this dynamic better than most. Born Jean Antonio Poisson, she was not of noble birth, but her wit, intelligence, and charm propelled her to the pinnacle of court life. Once established as the king's official mistress, she used her position to sponsor artists, architects, and philosophers. Pompadour even influenced state policy, though her critics accused her of meddling. She played a role in fostering the alliance with Austria that shaped European diplomacy during the 7 Years' War. By the 1760s, her health began to fail. She suffered from tuberculosis. She died at only 42 years old. Louis XV, usually cold at public displays of grief, reportedly showed genuine sorrow. He even stood at a window to watch her funeral cortege leave Versailles, unusual for him, since monarchs often distanced themselves from the death of mistresses once their usefulness was gone. And she managed something few royal favorites did. She remained influential until her death. Being named mistress was an official acknowledgement, sometimes accompanied by apartments at Versailles, estates, or titles. It legitimized her role and gave her prestige at court. In a society where visibility at court determined status, this was priceless. Madame de Montespan, the celebrated mistress of Louis XIV, illustrates this point vividly. Nicknamed the true Queen of France, she wielded enormous influence during the height of the Sun King's reign. Montespan was witty, ambitious, and unafraid to use her position to promote her allies. She bore several children by Louis XIV, who were legitimized and married into noble families, and thereby extending her influence across generations. Yet her position also made her vulnerable when she was implicated in the infamous Affair of the Poisons, a scandal involving alleged witchcraft and attempted poisonings. Her fall was as dramatic as her rise. Though not formally punished, she was pressured to leave Versailles and retired to a convent in humiliation. Another mistress who was sent to a convent was Louise de Vallière. She didn't do anything wrong or scandalous. The king simply lost interest in her, and she was forced into a convent. She lived a quiet, pious life until her death. The mistress role often extended into politics, particularly when the king was disengaged or indecisive. Ministers sometimes had to negotiate with the mistress to reach the king. Enemies or rivals at court often sought to discredit or replace the mistress, making their position both powerful and precarious. Henri IV's mistress, Gabrielle d'Estrées, wielded significant influence. She urged the king, a Protestant, to convert to Catholicism in order to stabilize his reign, a move that culminated in his famous declaration, "Paris is worth a mass," meaning ruling France and especially Paris, the powerful capital, was more valuable than sticking rigidly to Protestant faith. Gabrielle had one of the most dramatic and mysterious endings among royal favorites. In 1599, while pregnant, Gabrielle suddenly fell ill after attending Easter festivities. Within days, she suffered violent convulsions and died at just 26 years old. Her sudden death sparked immediate rumors. Many suspected poisoning, orchestrated by political enemies who feared her growing influence, or by factions opposed to Henri marrying her. In the poisonous atmosphere at the French court, few believed her death was natural. Agnes Sorel's end was just as mysterious, and perhaps even more shocking, because she was the very first officially recognized royal mistress of France. But her mistress career was cut short. In 1450, while pregnant, Agnes suddenly fell ill and died at only 28. Just like Gabrielle, a century and a half later, her death immediately fueled rumors of poisoning. Some suspected Charles VII's powerful son, the future Louis XI, who resented her influence. Others pointed to jealous courtiers who hated her sway over the king. Modern science revisited the mystery in 2005 when a team of French forensic researchers examined her remains and found extremely high levels of mercury. While mercury was sometimes used in medicine, the concentration in her body suggests poisoning. Whether accidental overdose or deliberate murder remains unknown. But Madame de Berry's fate was the most brutal of all the French royal mistresses. Unlike Madame de Pompadour, she had little interest in politics or culture, but she enjoyed dazzling jewels, extravagant luxury, and so on. She also loved the jealous hatred from many courtiers, especially because she came from outside the nobility. But when Louis XV died in 1774, her power collapsed instantly. The new king, Louis XVI, and especially his queen, Marie Antoinette, despised her. Du Barry was banished from court to a convent and later allowed to retire quietly to her estate at Louisiane. But the French Revolution changed everything. Du Barry was seen as the embodiment of royal decadence. In 1793, at the height of the terror, she was arrested, tried for treason, and condemned to death. Witnesses described her as terrified on the scaffold. Unlike other aristocrats who faced execution with icy dignity, Du Barry reportedly pleaded for her life and cried out for mercy before the blade fell. Far from being a mere footnote in royal history, the king's mistress was often a power behind the throne, an intermediary, a patron, a tastemaker, and sometimes even a shadow advisor. In a world where official channels of influence were rigidly male, the mistress carved out a uniquely feminine sphere of authority. In this way, the voices of women who dared to turn intimacy into influence carried on into history. Remember to subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next video about the women in history.